blessed in that the majority of our rotations are landlocked. We do have one rotation where we cross the road a couple times to get to those pastures, but the cows get trained pretty easy and they know what they're doing and where they're going, so it's easy to move them. Yeah, and again, we have a real blessing in our landlords. We're staying in a pasture where our landlord built a pond because the other ponds weren't sufficient. And he put a cross fence in for us. That was 1,100 acres that were long north and south, and you could not graze the south end because in the summer when the water dries up, there's one pond and those cows would not go south. And if you put mineral or protein down there, they would just walk down and access it and walk right back. And so we cross-fenced it and built a good stock pond down there. And now we have a 3-pasture rotation, and it really made a difference in the country and the way we could take care of it. So having landlords that understand what you're trying to do and are willing to work with you on it is a huge blessing. And not everybody has that, but the Lord's been really good in giving us landlords that are trying to figure out what we're doing and understand that it's a good thing, and then they help us with it. So some folks, are able to do a lot of water development. And that's good, especially if you're going from an intentional to an intensive grazing system. Again, cash isn't something we have an excess of, and so real aggressive water development is not something we've been able to do, but you can do a lot with mineral placement. If you're feeding a free choice protein, as your consumption goes up, the draw is heavier, and so if you figure out, and even the gate you go through in these rotations, where you place the cattle when you move them can determine how they graze the whole pasture. We've had to change the way we place cattle when we move them because we thought through the gate meant they were moved when we started, and that isn't always the case. You need to get them where you want them and place them and set them, and then they graze out from there. We've had to move mineral completely to the north end in a place or two, completely to the south end, and in some places just a nice central location where there's water and mineral works good, and they're accessing it all the time out from around. And so that the mineral placement's really important. Then in the winter when we start feeding, we can do a lot of leveling out on these pastures during dormancy and make them harvest that big grass, which is basically our hay crop. We talked earlier, we don't put up any hay, buy very little hay because we stockpile our native. And so in the winter, we're going to be feeding our DDG and that big grass that didn't get ate this summer. So next spring, we've kind of leveled everything off and are ready to come back even that way. We've got one group that's got 185 pairs in it, and we'll use a feed wagon for them just to kind of give them something to follow because that's just so many. And the horses. To handle by 2 horses and a couple of dogs. Because if they do look, they don't have to be trying to get away. They can just kind of wander and you end up overworking. So we use a feed wagon with that. And like these cows, they're actually migrating towards the gate. They're thinking since we didn't get fed, maybe they're going to move us. And so here in a little bit when we're done, we'll call them back over and feed them a little bit. But they know what you're doing when you come down here with a horse. If you're going to ride them to count them and look at them, you don't holler or call them. If you're going to move them, all you got to do is ride in and just kind of saboss a couple times, and they'll start picking their head up and heading for the gate because they know what you're trying to do. So there's an awful nice effort right there.
The main difference between intensive and intentional grazing, I would say, is intensive requires a lot of work because a lot of people that do intensive grazing, you have to put up temporary hot fences, move it every day or every few hours, so you're out moving them every day, every hour. With us, they're in there for anywhere from a week to 14 days, and then we move them, and the fences are permanent, and the water is there, and so we're not spending, kind of goes back to what we talked about with spending time with family and picking important things. We want to make the grass as good as we can, but we also don't want to have to be out in each spot every day or every few hours, right, moving water and moving mineral and moving fence and then going to the next, or putting up. I know some people that put up a whole bunch of little fences, and that just costs money and takes time and upkeep, and we've really been pleased with the way this works.
Yeah, the fellow told me one time, and I've heard it since, one of the guys that I do a little reading of talks about the cows need to work for you. You need to take care of them, but they need to work for you. And like Nathan said, there's enough important things in life, family and church and the things we need to be about. Being busy is really not the goal, being a good steward is. And so that's kind of where we've gravitated with stuff.